Alright, good morning, Nigeria. This is the big story on Daybreak Live, where we go beyond the headlines to dissect the issues that shape our nation's future. Today, we are confronting a matter at the core of our democracy, broken ballot box, the fight for electoral integrity. From pre-election maneuvers to post-election litigations, the cracks in our process are as glaring as ever. And to help us break it all down, we have in the studio this morning a seasoned public affairs analyst, Plato, a voice known for sharp insight and fearless analysis. I am Samson Balogun, and thank you for tuning in. Free and fair elections are the heartbeat of any democracy. But in Nigeria, that heartbeat has too often been irregular. From the ballot snatching of the past to today's high-tech vote buying. Before elections, we see questionable primaries and flawed voter registration. On election day, logistical failures and intimidation. After elections, the battle shifts to judiciary. INEC, political parties, security agencies, the courts, and citizens, each bears a responsibility. With our guest, Plato, in the studio with me, we'll trace the history of electoral malpractice, unpack the challenges faced by all stakeholders, and explore whether reforms can truly restore the people's trust in their ballot. Good morning to you, Plato.
Good morning, Samson. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you here.
It's a pleasure.
There's a lot to talk about this morning.
Sure.
We want to talk about how we can restore faith in the electoral system in the country. And if we want to talk about the electoral system and the failures, we can't just talk about INEC. There are so many things attached to it. After the election, something happened. Before the election, something happened. Even on election day, something must have happened. All these culminated in the malfeasance we currently see in the electoral scene in Nigeria. How did we get here?
Well, the truth is, as long as human nature keeps to set in every facet of life, you would always see the attempt by one party or one side to try to outmaneuver the other or maneuver the other if the other party is indolent. And what we have seen is that in our own space where the quest to be in government, and see, it's not just peculiar to Nigeria. In 2000, in the election between Al Gore and George Bush Jr., there were clear cases of malfeasance, electoral malfeasance, that were present. However, Al Gore considered to George Bush Jr. all for the sake of the country. Now, something similar to that also played out in 2018 in the U.S. 2018 in the U.S. in the build-up to the election between that brought the return of Donald Trump. Towards the second term of Donald Trump. And we saw how that election also threw up a lot of electoral malfeasance and all that. So it's not peculiar to Nigeria. The truth is human nature would always set in. And by human nature, there is always this tendency. And that takes me to, the whole idea of the state of nature by, Thomas Hobbes, where he said that in the state of nature, okay, there were no rules. The only rule was the rule of self-preservation, which is that I seek to do all I can to ensure that my interest is protected. You seek to do all you can to ensure your interest is protected. Now, there would always be a point where there will be conflict. And that is where life becomes short, brutish, and nasty. So that human nature, that instinct, that animal instinct in every human will always keep setting in. And as it keeps setting in, the duty of the state, therefore, is to regulate the human nature. You see, every human has a tendency towards, crime. Every human has a tendency towards cheating the other person. But the state will stand in as a rail guard, preventing such from happening. But where the state now fails, okay, in preventing that from happening, we will see what we are seeing in Nigeria as well as other developing countries. All right.
Nigeria has had a long history of electoral malfeasance, from ballot stuffing back in the days. Before it was snatching, later it became stuffing. People will thumbprint and mass and then put it in the ballot. And then when they count, they eventually win. And then it came from, after stuffing, to vote buying in recent elections, where we now see people selling their vote and people are buying it, which means automatically after you have, sold your vote, you do not expect anything from such candidates. And then, in your view, what are the root causes to have allowed these practices to persist?
First, let me make this clear that rigging is almost difficult where a political party does not have a strong sway. And I'll give you an example. I still recall vividly in the June 12, 1993 election, my uncle happened to be an SDP agent, and it was option A4. So you queue behind your candidate or the party of your candidate, and then the candidate, and then the agent of your party counts. Now this was what I saw, and it got me surprised. As a secondary school student, you are wondering how did it come. So the man was counting 1, 2, 3, and then he got to 78, I think, and the next number is Ed was 197.
Wow.
And the NRC agent looked the other way. So, in my infantile mind, I was wondering. I'm sure I did not lose, missed classes in mathematics, so I should still get
because back then, if you are counting, people are counting with
my
you.
numeracy right. So from 78 to 197, and everyone kept mute, including the NRC agent, and they counted, and of course Abiola was declared
was
winner.
in the know.
Yes, the winner. And then I walked up to him and he said, "Do you think the NRC agent that turned the other way does not want our candidate to win?" Now, what am I bringing out of this? The long and short of it is, you see, electoral malpractices would always come in where politicians are keen on getting there. That's one. Two is the place of the level playing ground, okay? And if you look at it really, let's take our minds back to what happened pre-independence. In the build-up to the 1959 election, we saw the heated nature of politics. We saw how we developed our political parties along tribal lines, save for NCNC, which was started by Bad Macaulay and Egati Shingo, who eventually went back to the Gambia. But then we saw how heated. We saw how the AG, which was a production of Egbe Omodudua. We saw the NPC, which was a production of the Arewa group. We saw NCNC, which also became like a flagship for the eastern region. And it was heated because now it was a question of my own person has to be there, my own people. And that was what played out. When NCNC and AG could not have majority seats in the Western House of Assembly, AG pushed, the idea to IPP, which was the Ballot People's Party, led by, the then Adelabu, that, see, would you allow someone from the East to come and control the Western region? Don't you think that that's an attempt at, overrunning all of us? And that was how IPP formed a coalition with AG to form the government of the Western region. And we saw that play out several times. In fact, in the build-up of, towards the 1953-1954 election, general election and, of course, regional election, we also saw how, because of the heated issue between Akintola and Awolowo, everywhere those who were loyal to Awolowo went to, they were painting Akintola as being, a slave of the North. Akintola, too, painted AG as working in cahoots with the North. So, this whole idea of our own. So they already understood the temperaments and the temperature of those they are dealing with, and they simply sell that to them. Now, why do we keep having this? I've said this, number one, that because of human nature. Two, our politicians all just want to get to power. And if you look up to the Second Republic, it was also the same thing. The Third Republic, it was the same thing. The Fourth Republic that we are in, unfortunately, is still the same thing. Now, what has the system been doing to nip this in the bud? A system that is seen not to be fair enough should not expect fairness from those who participate in the game. Now, when the system is seen as working in cahoot with a select politician, we saw what happened in the 1998 election. We saw how it was quite obvious that the military administration was more or less in cahoot with Obasanjo and of course the PDP. We saw how even when Obasanjo was living in 2007, he conducted the worst election ever in the history of this country, even as acknowledged by the winner of that election, the late Musa Yar'Adua. And the story goes on and on. So when the state is seen as being in cahoots, there will be a problem. Now, unfortunately, when institutions are also saddled with that responsibility, okay, are also seen as being in cahoots with politicians, it will be the same thing. We saw how in the days of FEDECO, from the First Republic up to the Second Republic, was seen as being in cahoots with, in bed with select politicians from a certain region. We saw how INEC, under our own space, has also been, the same. But the difference is, compare these two faces with the era of NEC under the late Professor Humphrey Nwosu. Now, there was a level playing ground. And when fairness is not in the fray, you would expect people to be on the defensive. And when they're on the defensive, you will see situations as this, where everyone feels like, okay, I just need to do something, to ensure that I get power. Unfortunately, the eventual result will be that it will not bode well for the state, because it means that you're going to allow the worst of us to rule the best of us. Now, that is the unfortunate part of it. I think it was in this book, how democracies, die, that the author was talking about the place of, institutions. These institutions are meant to be rail guards to prevent the worst of us from coming into power. But when these institutions are meant to be the rail guard are seen as being in bed, with certain politicians, then you would always expect others to also look for a way to outmaneuver them.
Now let's break this down. As I said earlier, there are processes build up to an election, and even after the election, there are still other processes that plays out. Now let's take a look at the issue of candidates, selection of candidates, internal democracy within political parties, to the point where elections are conducted, which we are still going to get to. Now, do you think internal democracy within political parties is one of the major undoings of the electoral system we have in Nigeria as we speak?
Definitely. Let's trace the
case study, Ibadan North, by election.
Now, let's trace the origin, and it's just unfortunate. As much as we must give, the flowers to our founding fathers, the Awolowo, the Azikiwe, the, Ahmadu Bello and others, we must also, put the blame at their feet for all that they've done. You said this whole idea of imposition of candidate don't start now. And I just laugh when most of us, try to, say all of this. It did not start now. For instance, in Western region, it was obvious, it was seen how Awolowo imposed, candidates. Now, although it was not with the kind of brigandage, audaciousness that we have now, but there were imposition of candidates. Internal democracy was not followed. The reason, the reason UPN lost in Oyo State, lost in Ondo State, were because of these internal wranglings. In Oyo State, for instance, House of Assembly members who were critical of the late Bola Ige were not allowed to return, while others who were supporting Bola Ige were given a free roll. And why? When people challenged, Babawolo over this, well, it was because the governors were required to drop certain funds, for the funding of the election in 1983. So apparently, he was handicapped to caution them. So we saw huge defections from the UPN to the NPN. We saw it also in Ondo State. And now Omoborio was able to defeat Ajasin. The case of Lagos and Ogun was different because, they were able to manage that. Same with Bende State. In Kwara State as well, the NPN lost the seat to UPN because of these internal wranglings. So it's not a new thing that, you have situations where we have imposition of candidates. And the implication is that, now don't forget, every candidate would have his supporters. And when the candidate's supporters feel that their candidate was not given a level playing ground, you must expect that the candidate and his supporters will be aggrieved. And when they are aggrieved, they will do anti-party. I'll give you another example. In 1993, in the build-up of the election for the Third Republic in Lagos State, within the SDP, there were these two factions called the Progress and Consa. Okay, it was between Agbala Jobi and Sarumi, and between the SDP, and it was heated. Everywhere they get to, there was almost chaos. And of course, the then Lagos State military administrator said that the best was to disqualify the two of them, and then they picked Yomi Edu. And Yomi Edu was seen as being like a stooge or an extenuation of one of the camps, particularly the Consa camp. And what the Progress camp, which we now call Progressive, did, they on election day. So when we talk about anti-party, it's not today. On election day, they campaigned. In fact, I was witness to during the governorship election where I saw candidates or members of the SDP campaigning vigorously for Michael Otedola. Yes, Michael Otedola of the NRC. And that was why in the whole of the South, Lagos was the only place NRC had won election for governorship. So when such is the situation, when internal democracy is not allowed, and by internal democracy, see, there are two ways to it. There is the open primary, which is called direct primary. Every member of the party, every card-carrying member of the party queue behind their candidate of choice. Now that's the most ideal. But there's also the indirect primary. Unfortunately, because we have now decided to adopt the indirect primary, we have opened the window for manipulations. So only those who are escorts of the party
get to vote.
Okay, become delegates in the election. Now let me give you an example of what is done. So on an unusual primary day, each candidate will camp his own delegates in their hotel, give them money, and when they get to the voting center for primaries, you see a situation where a candidate who has a bigger fund will then come with money. Okay, how much is your candidate giving you? Okay, he's giving us 50,000. I'll give you 100,000. And you will be surprised at how these delegates will move away from switch. Yes, because you have made room for it's easy to buy a crop of persons. Now, these crop of persons do not also adequately represent the interests of all. So where the majority of party members now feel that no, these delegates, because again, look at what happened in Oyo State in 2023 with the Jagba principle. A candidate made sure that he swept all the delegates in the party. And so when election time, when time for primaries came, he was able to install his men. And what happened? Within his own party, people campaigned against him. So when you don't promote internal democracy, make sure that the system is fair and seen to be fair. There are two different things. When you are fair and you're not seen to be fair, there will be a problem. But you must make sure that you are fair, the system is fair, and seen to be fair and open to all. The system through which we elect candidates for parties at the moment is wrought with so much irregularities. So it's all about who can scheme the other person out. So it's all about what quality the candidate is bringing. This is now the danger of it. So you don't see our parties, our candidates subjected to even internal scrutiny by the party. You see that they don't have an idea. It's all about, the noise, baba, that the women will sing for them, or okay, I'm able to donate this amount. So if you don't have money, you cannot even get the party ticket, regardless of how intelligent you are or how brilliant your ideas are.
I was speaking to a candidate who intends to be a governor come 2027. He went to a particular local government, gave them 500,000. Another candidate came there and gave them 13 million naira. Who's going to win in that local government?
Definitely, they will never even remember the guy that gave them 500,000. The unfortunate thing about the populace is, and maybe we'll come to that, the place of impoverishment. I told someone, I said, if you want to win an election in Nigeria, okay, your business is not with the poor. I tell you, because the poor would always pander to whoever gave them the last money.
Oh.
Yeah, so if you gave them 5,000 naira last week, and somebody is giving them 2,000 naira now, that 5,000 naira has finished. The 2,000 naira is what is serving. So they will not remember the days of yore. And this is where the danger, in our democracy comes in. So we need to look beyond. So our parties have failed. In our democracy, the authors were talking about the role of the political parties as railguards. When political parties have also failed, why would anyone want to contest? And you are telling them for governorship, they would have to, the ticket, the form is 500 million or is 200 million. So you expect that someone who paid 200 million for a form,
not to steal when it becomes government.
You think he will not steal when it gets there? Or you expect that, if the person gets there, and, even political party members would expect him. Well, a governor in Nigeria most times is the governor of his political party.
He's automatically the leader.
Yes, he's the governor of his political party. He has to do things for members of his political party first. The people come next. So if he's giving out contract, he has to give it to members of his political party. And most times, these members of his political parties are political merchants. So they get the contract, they don't do them. Mr. Governor cannot do anything because he will be exposing his own political party. So these are the issues. So that measure, that internal democracy is almost not there. The annoying part of it is you even see it in what I would call even mushroom parties.
It is the same everywhere.
And I think that is where we now begin to we need to think of tinkering with the idea of independent candidacy.
Now, before we get to independent candidacy, we'll still speak about INEC and some modalities that has to come on board for us to have a more trustworthy electoral process. But then, are there loopholes or lacunas in what we currently have as our voter registration process?
Definitely. There are loopholes. Thank God that we are trying to even, wrap up and, of course, mop up our registration process in Nigeria. That Nigeria is a country where data is almost non-existent. And back in the day, you see a person who can register in 10 different places. Okay? Now, even now, how do we even separate Nigerians from non-Nigerians? If I'm from Benin Republic, for instance, and I've not even I've not naturalized myself, I can simply go to any of the local governments and register for NIN. I'll get a BVN. Okay? Just make sure that your name does not look foreign. I'll get a BVN. So, how many Nigerians have Nigerian citizenship certificates? These are issues. So if I'm a Beninois and my wife put to bed in a Nigerian hospital, a government hospital, my wife will be issued, my child will be issued a certificate, a birth certificate, which I can present for citizenship. Of course, there is citizenship by birth. All right. So there are a lot of issues that we need to deal with. There are a lot of lacunas within our registration system that we must fix as a matter of urgency. Now, a system also that makes it difficult for us to track where a candidate is voting and the time the candidate is voting. There is no need why, there is no reason. Why do we have a barcode at the back of our registration cards, of our voters card? Why do I have to wait for ages before I get my, INEC voters card? Back in the day when you want to apply for an, automated teller machine card in Nigeria, ATM card, you have to wait for Kingdom years. Yeah. But now you can walk into your bank and you get the one almost immediately to be ready. So we need to move up. We should be able to have our cards early enough.
The slow pace in the voter registration, is it a deliberate attempt in a way that the electoral process will be decimated one way?
I may not call it, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist. So I do not want to see it as a deliberate attempt. However, it is just the failure of our system. Okay, it's a failure of our system.
If the banking system could achieve it, how much more of the federal
government? It's not the only thing. We still see that even in government parastatal, you see people carrying papers all around. Okay, As our children want to register for JAM and WAEC, and then they have to go through as if you can't do biometrics in your house. I can do biometrics if I want to do. I can do my biometrics. Do I need to go to one of your, accredited centers?
As long as you have a phone, it can be done.
So you have a lot of phones and a lot of
biometrics
Android
enabled.
phones have their biometrics enabled. So why can't I do my biometrics on my phone? Why can't I register? Some of us said that one would expect, maybe because we've seen the bad days of this country. There was a time in this country, if I was sharing, I still share with my kids, that there was a time in this country that when we want to go and get JAM form, we wake up from Baja in Lagos as early as 4:30 or 4 a.m. And then by the time we get to Ikoyi, which is where the JAM center is, where everybody will get the JAM center, we'll get there maybe around 5:36, and by that time you already have over 1,000 people on the queue. And you can go there 2 days if you are not streetwise. Okay, if you are not streetwise, you can go there 3 days and not even get a form.
To do anything.
The same process is what you use to get your form. The same process you use to get your center. The same process is what you use to check your results. So we need to move up. The world is no longer in 2001. The world is moving up. So we need to look at how we can, wrap up all this. Now, our registration process is too cumbersome. So I want to register. You tell me to go and queue. So I get there. Then one INEC official and some louds see it as an avenue to rip me off. So they tell me my number is number 189. And I have work to do. And you think I want to stay? So you are technically disenfranchising people. We don't understand the value of time. The value of time in this country. So we don't know what it means to waste people's time. So you think I have a serious work to do and not sit down because I am a patriotic Nigerian, particularly with the quality of governance you have in this country. I'll sit down with number 189 or 1878, and then one person comes and say, "Sir, okay, can I pay something? I will bring you in." Okay. Some of us are lucky because with our ID cards you can enter easily. But what happens to those who cannot enter? Now, why should we even be able to enter easily? It brings us to the anyhowness that we have in this country. Why shouldn't I follow the same process?
Protocol.
All right, so these are the issues. So until we deal with some of these things, and then when we now talk about that, we now brings us to even how our elections are conducted. We have the beavers in the last. I've been monitoring election for almost a decade now, and in the last election I was happy that the beavers was going to help out. But what happened? Some of us who were observers had to be turning our Wi-Fi on, our hotspot on, for INEC officials
to transmit
results. Do you understand the danger? As a cyber security person, you simply know that if I turn my hotspot on for you and you connect, I can access your back end. I can hack into your back end. However encrypted it may be, I can hack into your back end. So we don't even understand the danger in that. We just feel that INEC official could not upload results. Some were even uploading their own pictures. So we check. We should make, even if our system is not totally foolproof, but at least to a large extent. So these are the issues. Now we need to move up with technology, and we should not be all mouths and trousers that we, most times we are when it comes to issues like this. We should be able to look at how we can step up the game in dealing with these issues. Now, how do we transmit results? Why should I vote and then I have to wait for 2 days? You have to carry my result from the polling unit to a collation center, and then a rack, and then from that rack we go to local government, and from there you feel that the results will not be missing.
Plateau, let's talk about electoral violence. These are some of the things we do face when we talk about electoral malfeasance in the country. Now, on election day, sometimes people complain that they are being disenfranchised. Some are beaten and sent away from the polling units just because they have a different opinion. They wanted to vote for a different candidate, but some would not let that happen. That is one. Two, some candidates are just relaxed. They know that they can bully their way into winning the election, but then they know they actually did not win. But of course, they are sure that no matter how well you are, whatever kind of money you have, when you get to court, they are definitely going to win, regardless of whatever happens. Now, these are challenges constantly being faced by people who we are not so sure probably have good intentions for the people, but they are being robbed out of office on every election. These things happen.
Definitely, but I dare tell you that electoral violence in this country has reduced. If you consider it, pari passu what we used to have in the early days or early years of the Fourth Republic, and even compared to the Third Republic or the Second Republic and the First Republic, electoral violence has reduced.
We used to have more than one secretariat in Ibadan.
Yes, because now the reason is simple. It's not because we are now better as a people. It's simply because vote buying is the order of the day. Why do I need to waste my time, engaging in electoral violence when gathering thugs? When I can simply buy votes, is about Diboko Sibe. So violence has reduced. But then managing electoral violence in election is as a result of the failure of our institutions. Now, there is what we call in electoral vocabulary, there's what we call the concentric spot of election. That is the place of election. Now, the thugs they don't have a due ex machina, the hand of God, and just disappear to the place of election. They are coming from somewhere. So what happened to managing the security? And that's why if you also look at the logic of what the Nigerian police does, you see that people who man the polling units do not bear arms.
Right. Because
it's a logic. It is believed that those who bear arms should be at the barricades preventing movement. So how did these criminals pass through to get to the concentric spot of election? So if there is a problem, it means that we need to do much more. It means that some persons are likely or possibly complicit, in all of this. Maybe having, sold their soul out to politicians. Because now, it is going to be difficult for just one person to get to a polling unit and begin to unleash terror. If there is just one person, you can be sure that he's a notorious person whom one would have expected should have been picked up before now.
Before then.
Okay, I'll give you an example. In the governorship election in Ogun State, in 2023, there was this character around, Beggar, that there were informations around him, about him already, for Adodo Ota. And one would expect that the police would have picked up this character, but it was not picked up. Okay, so when it is election day, we will now begin to complain that he's unleashing violence. And what do you expect? So we are not doing so much. We know the red spots. See, I dare tell you that the Nigerian police is very effective if they want to be effective.
Only if they want to.
Okay, Nigerian security apparatus is very effective if they want to. At least to a large extent, I've been understanding security, architecture in this country for over a decade, and I understand what I'm saying.
So what's the problem? Is there an issue of political influence?
Definitely, there is. No, I would not even say it's political influence. I would rather talk about political will. Political will. If the IG is appointed by the president, the DSS Director General is appointed by the president. The NIA Director is appointed by the president. The Chief of Army Staff by the president. The Chief of Naval Staff by the president. The Chief of Air Staff by the president. The CDS by the president. What do you expect? The Commandant of NSCDC. Commandant of Nigerian prisons. Commandant of, so you would expect them to pay their loyalty. Look at what is happening with the police. The IG is meant to have retired. A law was amended, abracadabra, okay, just to give room,
extend his
tenure beyond the second term of the president, beyond, when the president would be seeking re-election. And you expect such a man not to be loyal to the president? They play my fans. That's the reality. So we need to do so much more. Look at how we can marshal and police those areas. Now, you see, it is not that people will not want to engage in electoral violence. But if we are able to marshal all that spot. And the implication is that, and I also feel that these electoral violence has become a tool, okay, to make the electorate weary. People say, oh, I don't want to go and vote because I don't want anybody to unleash violence on me. That's to tell you of, the terrible situation of things. So because of that, people get withdrawn. In recent times, there have been researches on the level of political apathy in Nigeria. It will shock you that in the last 20 years, the percentage of voters in election is less than 50% of registered voters. That speaks to you about, the terrible state of things. The percentage of voters on election day is less than 40%. I think the highest we've had is 38%.
Now, very quickly, Plato, I want you to talk on this. Let's talk about the role of the judicial arm of government in all that is happening in the country, especially when we talk about elections. In the year 2020, there's a brief recap of the court judgment that made Opus Odima of the All Progressives Congress, APC, governor of Imo State, even though he was initially recorded as finishing fourth in the March 2019 governorship election. INEC declared the winner in 2019, that was Emeka Ihedioha of the People's Democratic Party. And the court's ruling, the Supreme Court held that INEC had unlawfully excluded results from 388 polling units, which, once added, gave Uzodinma the highest number of valid votes. Reasoning, the court said the excluded votes were valid and should be counted, and once they were included, Uzodinma surpassed Ihedioha in the total votes. Now, someone who came fourth eventually was declared winner. What is the role, in 1 minute, what is the role of the judicial arm of government when we talk about electoral malfeasance in the country?
Let me say this, because I think, again, because a lot of our people do not understand how the law operates, they often think that the law is an ass. That's a common saying. You need to understand how the law operates before you can begin to, run down the judiciary. In the case of Opus Odima, there's a standard principle in law that the court is not a Father Christmas. It simply grants your prayers. Now, what the court simply did in that case was there were prayers. Who validates a result? It is the polling officer, not the RO. So if anybody will cancel results, it is the duty of the polling officer. Now, these were some of the issues that came up in that. But we saw a situation where the polling officer, the polling unit officer, validated the results, yet they were exempted. And many times too, and I always say this, if you want to lose an election petition in Nigeria, leave the whole defense to INEC. I bet you are going to lose. Because INEC most times does not call in a strong defense. They don't call in strong witnesses.
They don't have the time.
So,
or they do not care.
If you look at a lot of the cases we have seen in this country that has gone through the judiciary and they have been upturned or sustained, most times you see the failure of INEC. So INEC only plays a passive role in the whole adjudication process, acting as if, well, we have conducted the election, you parties. So don't wait for INEC. Unless you call in strong witnesses. But only if you have been declared winner. If you don't call in strong witnesses, you will lose. So most times people don't understand these things. They just say, oh, the election has been conducted. Oh, the court, how can the court say that this person is the winner? But we know it's not the winner. Well, you may know.
But the court does not work on that.
The court does not work on conjectures. In fact, since it's a civil matter, it must be on the measure of probability. So you must be able to present a stronger probability that the case is in your, the case is in your favor. Not that you sit down and then, come on, equity will favor the vigilant, not the indolent. So most times it's because we don't understand this thing, and it has brought our, our courts to disrepute. Look at the example of, in 2019 when the PDP initiated an election, petition against Buhari, and then one of their grounds was there was a server, and it turned out that the person who said he, doing the server was actually a rookie, and you want the court to admit that as a strong evidence. So these are some of the issues Really?
We really have to go. But of course, your insights into what is happening in the country, especially when we talk about electoral malfeasance, has really been great this morning. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. I would hope that you'll be here next time we call you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Today's conversation with Plato has made one thing clear. Safeguarding the ballot box is not a task for one institution, but a collective responsibility. The broken ballot box can be fixed, but only if we refuse to normalize malpractice and hold every player accountable, from the polling unit to the highest officer in the land. As Plato has reminded us, democracy is only as strong as the integrity of its election. This has been the big story on Daybreak Live. I'm Samson Balogo saying, let's protect the vote. Let's protect the future. Thank you. We'll be back.